I have a question for you. When I say the word negotiation, where does your brain go? Like immediately. What's the movie playing in your head?
Oh, it's definitely a movie. I'm picturing a dimly lit room, maybe a hostage situation,
Right.
or at the very least, a boardroom with a long mahogany table, guys in expensive suits, and a lot of aggressive staring.
Exactly. It's high stakes, it's poker faces, it's a battle of wills. We're sort of conditioned to think of negotiation as this gladiator sport where the person with the most leverage
Or the loudest
or
voice.
the loudest voice
It's
wins.
that classic I win, you lose mentality.
Right. And because of that mental image, how do we prepare? We open up spreadsheets, we memorize facts, we look for those, gotcha data points. We arm ourselves with logic because we think we're walking into a war zone.
We've got some research to unpack today that suggests we are bringing the wrong weapons entirely.
It's not just the wrong weapons.
It's the wrong map. We're preparing for a battle over numbers, but the research shows we're actually stepping into a minefield of language.
That's the pivot. We tend to think, if I have the best argument, I win. But today's deep dive is into a text called The Right Words, and it argues that you can have the best facts in the world, but if you're using the wrong vocabulary, you've already lost.
It's fascinating because it reframes the whole concept. It moves negotiation away from domination and toward translation.
Translation, I like that. So here's the mission for this deep dive. We're going to figure out why so many negotiations stall out, even when both sides actually want to make a deal.
And how a specific, almost invisible shift in the words we choose can unlock what the text calls real progress.
And just to be clear, real progress here doesn't mean tricking the other person.
No, not at all. It means actually getting to an agreement that sticks.
Okay, so let's start with the foundational problem. The material leads with this really bold thesis. In negotiation, many misunderstandings come down to language. Now, I read that, and my knee-jerk reaction was, well, yeah, obviously. But the more I thought about it, I don't think we actually believe that. I think we believe misunderstandings come down to greed or stubbornness.
Or just opposing interests.
Right.
We assume that if we're clashing, it's because our goals are incompatible. I want to pay less, you want to charge more, therefore we fight.
But this research is suggesting that a huge percentage of the time, the goals are actually compatible.
They are. We just don't realize it because we're coding our desires in different languages.
Different codes for the same outcome.
Exactly. And this brings us to a concept that I think is really uncomfortable for a lot of smart people to hear. The text has a very strict, almost brutal definition of effective communication.
Oh, I loved this part because I felt personally attacked.
Well, how would you define effective communication normally?
I mean, usually. I'd say it's expressing my idea clearly, concisely, accurately. If I say exactly what I mean and I'm precise, then I've communicated effectively.
And that is exactly where we get it wrong. The research here defines effective communication strictly as using words the other person understands.
See, that sounds simple, but it flips the responsibility entirely. It means if I say something brilliant and precise, but you don't get it, I'm the one who failed.
100%. It's
Yeah.
receiver-centric. We spend so much time polishing our transmission, making our arguments sound smart, using our industry jargon,
The acronyms.
the acronyms that make us feel like experts. But if that signal hits the other person's brain and turns into static, you haven't negotiated. You've just made noise.
But isn't there a risk there? I mean, I can hear the skeptics listening right now thinking, okay, so I have to dumb it down. I have to talk like a kindergartner just to get a deal done.
It's a valid fear, but dumbing down is the wrong way to think about it. It's not about simplification. It's about alignment.
Alignment.
Think of it like a radio frequency. You can be broadcasting the most beautiful symphony in the world on 98.5 FM, but if the person across the table is tuned to 101.3, they hear nothing.
Just static.
You aren't dumbing down the music by changing the dial to 101.3. You're just ensuring it can be heard.
That makes sense. It's about meeting them where they are.
It's about mapping your ideas onto their reality. If you don't do that, you aren't negotiating. You're just two people engaging in parallel monologues.
Parallel monologues. That describes about half the meetings I've ever been in.
Only half. You're lucky.
So if the goal is mutual understanding,
Right.
getting on that same frequency, how do we actually do it? Because it's easy to say speak their language, but in the heat of the moment, when I'm stressed about a deal, I revert to my language.
It's the default setting. We all do it.
Right.
That's why the text suggests a very specific tactical tool to force that alignment. It talks about mirroring.
Mirroring. Now, we have to pause here because mirroring has a bit of a reputation.
It does.
Yeah. It feels a little bit like a sales trick from the 90s, you know? If they cross their legs, you cross your legs.
Oh, right, the body language stuff.
Yeah, it feels manipulative, or at best, just kind of creepy.
I get that. And body language mirroring is a whole other conversation.
Well,
But what we're talking about here is verbal mirroring. And it's not about manipulation, it's about signaling.
okay.
The research outlines two specific functions for why this works, and neither of them is about tricking anyone.
Okay, lay them out. What's the first function?
The first is simply attention. It shows the other party that you are actually listening to them.
Which is rare.
Incredibly rare. In
Oh.
a standard negotiation, most people aren't listening. They're reloading. They're waiting for a gap in the audio so they can fire off their next argument.
Mm-hmm.
When you mirror someone's specific words back to them, you break that pattern. You are proving, essentially, I am not in my own head, I am in yours.
Okay, so it's validation, but what's the second function?
The second function is perspective sharing. The text says mirroring demonstrates you are working to share the same perspective.
Working.
And I want to emphasize that word, working. It's
Yeah.
active. It is labor. You are doing the cognitive heavy lifting to cross the chasm between your brain and theirs.
So when you use their words, you're implicitly saying, I value your way of seeing the world enough to inhabit it for a moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that lowers defenses faster than any concession you could offer.
But let's play devil's advocate for a second. If I just sit there repeating everything you say, aren't you going to look at me like I'm a parrot?
Yeah, of course.
I want a better price. You want a better price. Yes, that's what I said. It seems like it could get annoying fast.
If you do it robotically, yes. It's not about parroting every sentence. It's about catching the key words, the words that seem to carry emotional weight for them, and weaving those back into your response.
So it's subtle.
It's subtle. It's the difference between I hear what you're saying, which is totally generic, and I hear that price is a critical factor for you.
Okay, that leads us perfectly to the next section because the source material gives an example of this that is, honestly, it's the kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't looking for it.
The partnership versus contract trap.
Yes. This blew my mind a little bit. The text lays out this scenario. One person says, I really want this to be a partnership. And the other person responds, great, let's look at the contract.
And cue the screeching brakes.
But wait, and this is where I struggled at first. Technically, legally, a partnership is a contract. If we are partners, we have a contract. So why is this a mistake?
This is where we have to stop thinking like lawyers and start thinking like psychologists. You are right. Legally, they refer to the same document.
Yeah.
But emotionally, they are on different planets.
Okay. Break down the emotional payload for us.
Okay, think about the word partnership. When I say I want a partnership, what am I signaling? I'm signaling trust. I'm signaling a relationship. I'm talking about shared risk, shared reward, collaboration. It's a warm word.
Right. It's an invitation.
It's an invitation to work together.
Okay.
And contract.
Contract is a cold word.
It's a cold word. It implies rigidity. It implies enforcement. It implies, I don't trust you, so I need to write this down so I can sue you later if you screw up.
When you put it that way.
So imagine the interaction. I reach out a hand and say, let's be partners. And you slap a ruler into my hand and say, let's sign a contract.
Wow.
Even if you meant, yes, let's formalize our partnership, what I heard was, I don't care about the relationship. I care about the rules.
You've rejected my emotional bid.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You've created a disconnect. The text says you might not actually mean the same thing. And that's the tragedy of it. You might both want the deal. But because you switched from a warm vocabulary to a cold vocabulary, you triggered a threat response.
And suddenly I'm not looking at the vision anymore. I'm looking at the fine print. I'm defensive.
The guard goes up.
Huh.
And once the guard is up, negotiation becomes 10 times harder.
It's amazing how fragile that moment is. It reminds me of, have you ever been in an argument with a significant other and you say something like, I just want us to have a plan, and they say, fine, here's the schedule.
Oh, absolutely.
And you just explode and they're like, what? A schedule is a plan.
Yes.
But it's not. A plan feels collaborative. A schedule feels imposed.
That is the perfect analogy. It's the exact same mechanism. One word feels like us. The other word feels like you versus me.
So we've identified the trap, the partnership versus contract mismatch. Now we need the fix. The text is very directive here. It says the solution is to reuse terms.
Simple, right?
But is it? Because I was taught, and I think most of us were taught in school, that repetition is bad writing. You shouldn't use the same word 3 times in a paragraph. Use synonyms.
And that is great advice for writing a novel It is terrible advice for negotiation.
So we have to unlearn our English class training.
You really do. In negotiation, synonyms are the enemy. Synonyms create friction.
How so?
Because every time you swap a word for a synonym, you are forcing the other person's brain to do a split-second translation. If they say flexibility and you say latitude,
Ooh, yeah.
their brain has to ask, wait, is latitude the same as flexibility? Or is he creating a loophole? Does latitude mean something specific in his industry?
It adds cognitive load.
Exactly. It makes them work to understand you.
Yeah.
And you want to make understanding you the easiest thing in the world.
So if they say flexibility,
You say flexibility. You don't say wiggle room.
wiggle room always sounds a bit shady anyway.
It really does. But even a positive word like collaboration, the text mentions this one explicitly. If they say, we need more collaboration, and you say, I agree, we need better division of labor, you might think you're agreeing.
But you've missed the mark.
You've missed the emotional mark again. Collaboration is togetherness. Division of labor is separation.
So the advice is, swallow your pride, forget the thesaurus, and just use their word.
Be a mirror. It validates them, and it removes the friction. It makes the path to yes smooth because you aren't putting any linguistic speed bumps in the way.
The text makes a pretty big claim about the result of this.
Yeah.
It says this specific behavior adapting vocabulary and mirroring is the catalyst that turns a stalled discussion into real progress.
And we've all been in those stalled discussions.
Yeah.
The logjam.
Right. Where you're just circling the drain. I can't do that price. I need that price. I can't do it. Why does simply changing a word break that deadlock? It seems too small a lever.
It works because usually the deadlock isn't actually about the price or the date. The deadlock is usually about safety.
Safety.
Psychological safety. When a negotiation stalls, it's usually because both sides have retreated into their fortresses. I'm protecting my interests, you're protecting yours. The drawbridges are up.
And we're shouting demands across the moat.
And nobody is listening because we're in defense mode. When you start mirroring, when you start using my words to describe the problem, you are essentially walking across that moat and knocking on the door. You are signaling, I am not an invader. I see this the way you do.
And that lowers the drawbridge.
It lowers the temperature of the entire room. It shifts the dynamic from me versus you to us against the problem.
And once you're in that us mindset,
The logistical stuff, the price, the dates, usually gets solved pretty quickly.
it's wild to think that we spend 90% of our prep time on the logistics and 0% on the vocabulary, when the vocabulary is what actually allows the logistics to happen.
It's the classic error. We focus on the what and ignore the how. But the how dictates whether the what ever gets signed.
So let's recap the toolkit here. We've covered a lot, but I want to make sure these nuggets stick. First up, the definition of success.
Right. Effective communication isn't about you speaking clearly. It's about them understanding. Full stop.
Second, the power of the mirror.
Don't paraphrase. Mirror their specific keywords to show you're paying attention and to validate their perspective.
And third, the partnership versus contract danger zone.
Beware of synonyms. Don't swap a warm word for a cold word. If they offer a partnership, don't counter with a contract.
It really comes down to suppressing your own ego, doesn't it? The ego wants to use my words. The ego wants to correct you. Actually, it's not a partnership. It's a limited liability company.
Exactly. And being technically correct is a great way to be emotionally wrong. And in negotiation, emotion drives the bus.
The best negotiators aren't the ones who dominate the room with their vocabulary. They're the ones who can inhabit the vocabulary of the person across from them.
That's the paradox of influence. You gain influence by letting them set the terms literally.
So before we wrap this deep dive, I want to leave everyone listening with a final thought. Because this is all theory until you try it.
Here is my challenge. The next time you find yourself in a disagreement, big or small, business or personal, stop looking at the facts for 1 second. Just listen.
Listen to their dictionary.
Listen to their dictionary. Are they saying fairness? Are they saying security? Are they saying hassle? Pick that one word up, put it in your pocket, and use it in your very next sentence. I want to make sure this is fair. I don't want this to be a hassle.
And just see what happens to the energy in the room.
I guarantee you, you will feel the tension drop. It's almost like magic, but it's just psychology.
Well, I know I'm going to be watching my words a lot more carefully today. Thanks so much for breaking this down.
It was a pleasure.
And to everyone listening, stop polishing your arguments and start polishing your vocabulary. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
Keep listening.